right, as students, we're going to walk you through the carbon cycle today. I'm going to kind of move fast here. I've got the model up here. We got atmosphere, geosphere, biosphere, and hydrosphere. In this sphere, we have CO2. It's unusable, and it's a gas. And the least amount of storage is in the atmosphere. All right. Down here in the geosphere, this is what stores the most carbon out of the four spheres, by far, not even close. Down here in the biosphere, we have usable. This is where carbon is in the form of C6H12O6, and that's only in plants. But we also have carbon in DNA, protein, and fat. That can be found in all life. And of course, we also have CO2 dissolved in the ocean, in the hydrosphere. That's also unusable carbon as well. All right? So we need to kind of list those out. We've already drawn in the processes. I'm just going to start with the atmosphere. That unusable carbon dioxide in the atmosphere gets pulled into the biosphere by way of photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide is turned into C6H12O6. Of course, we know that there are plants in the oceans and the water, lakes, streams, ponds, and the water has CO2 dissolved in it as well. And those plants then pull CO2 out of the water through photosynthesis, converting it into C6H12O6. The opposite of that, of course, is cellular respiration. So all living things perform cellular respiration, where the glucose is burned and then exhaled or released from the gills. If it's a land animal or plant, then cellular respiration puts that CO2 back into the atmosphere. If it's an aquatic organism, then that aquatic organism burns the glucose and through cellular respiration puts the CO2 back in the water. We know living things die, all right? If a land, plant, or animal dies through decomposition, all of that carbon in the body through decomposition, I should point that arrow moves it back into the atmosphere. But through decomposition, you also have carbon move from the biosphere to the geosphere, so some of the carbon will go into the ground. And of course, if a fish dies, that carbon through decomposition will move from the biosphere to the hydrosphere. So we see decomposition moving carbon from the biosphere to all three other spheres. All right? Let's quick jump to the carbon in the water. There is a huge interface between the world's oceans and the atmosphere, and carbon is always moving in both directions. So we got a double arrow here. We have carbon dioxide diffusing from the atmosphere to the hydrosphere, but we also have carbon dioxide diffusing from the hydrosphere to the atmosphere. So make note of that double arrow. All right? All right. Finally, I shouldn't say finally, but we also kind of got to go way back in time to the Carboniferous period, 350 million years ago, when those plants were living. Remember, we went through those videos, the plants died and they were buried. Through a really slow process, those plants slowly converted into fossil fuels to become part of the geosphere. So fossil fuel formation moves carbon from the bio to the geo, and it is a super, super slow process, hundreds of millions of years to occur. Haven't really talked much about this, but when volcanoes erupt, carbon moves from the geosphere to the atmosphere through volcanic activity. But the one that we want to talk about is when humans burn fossil fuels, coal, oil, or natural gas. We pull that carbon out of the geosphere and we burn it through combustion, which moves it to the atmosphere. I should also point out that forest fires can also burn. That would move carbon from the biosphere to the atmosphere through combustion. So make a little footnote of that. Okay? In the next video, we will do the human impact, and we'll talk about that in a second.